allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we have Vivian Rodriguez with us here to translate.
Sí, muy buenas noches y bienvenidos de parte de la Junta Directiva del Distrito Escolar de Santa Bárbara. Si hay alguien que necesite ayuda con un intérprete, por favor levante la mano para darle un audífono. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have headsets for the hearing impaired if you need them. Dr. Cyrus, introductions, proclamations, presentations, or recognitions.
Good. We're going to start tonight by introducing Megan Wilson, a 7th grade student at Santa Barbara Junior High. Megan, would you please come up to the podium? And do you want the microphone? Okay, we can pull it off of there for you. Megan sang the anthem at this year's Fiesta Rodeo. In the audience that night was the director of the Tournament of Roses, who booked her to sing the anthem at the Tournament of Roses Equifest, their kickoff event in December. Her performance will be televised to 1 billion people around the world who follow the event. Megan, we're so pleased to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, and I'm going to sing the Star Spangled Banner and then Amazing Grace.
Well, Megan, don't go away just yet. We have some board members who I'm sure would like to talk to you. Megan is here with her parents and Principal John Becchio here tonight.
Mrs. Deacon?
Well, I'm almost speechless, but I have to say that was incredibly remarkable. Our district is known for having a number of students who've gone on to do great things, and I think we just saw another one of them here this evening. So thank you so much, and congratulations.
I'd just like to say, as I think we all are almost speechless. I mean, it's wow. But I would just like to thank you very much for sharing your gift with us tonight. This is one of the true joys of being on the board. And I'd also like to thank your family and your teachers for the support that they undoubtedly have given you, because clearly you must have had a lot of support to get this far. So thank you very much, and I know you're going to just do some wonderful things.
Mrs. Parker?
I guess my next question is, do you plan to try out for the spring musical? Okay, because I'll be there.
We'll be there. We definitely will be there. And don't worry about 1 billion people. You know, just think of this group right here and just do exactly the same thing, and you'll be okay. Okay. Congratulations. Wonderful. And by the way, you can watch TV Saturday night at 5 o'clock on Channel 18 and see yourself and tape it for your grandchildren.
Well, Board, we do have one other student who's a remarkable student that we want to recognize tonight. I'd like to ask Mark Raphael, an 8th grade student at La Colina, to join me here at the podium. Mark, we've been recognizing students who achieved exceptional scores on the California Standards Test in 2009-2010. Come on over this side, Mark. The CST, California Standards Test, measures progress toward achieving the state-adopted academic content standards in English language arts, math, science, history, social science. They don't give history, science, and science tests at all grade levels, but they do have students take an English language arts test and a math test every year. Well, Mark is being recognized tonight for his perfect scores of 600 in both English and mathematics. I'd also like to note that when he took the CST 2 years ago as a 6th grader, he also had a perfect score of 600 in mathematics. Congratulations, Mark, and congratulations to your parents and family, because we know that their encouragement and support have had an important role in your academic success. And here with us tonight is Principal of La Colina Junior High School, David Ortiz, as well. Congratulations. We have some board members who
Mrs. Cordero?
want to get in on this.
Well, you can't get any better than perfect, so I don't know what you're going to do, but that is phenomenal. You are an inspiration to I'm sure every other student in the district, and I just want to congratulate you because I know that must represent hundreds of hours of hard work. So thank you, and thank you to your parents and to your teachers and principal. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Well, Mr. Herron, shall I go on with the superintendent's report?
Yes.
Good. Well, this is Red Ribbon Week, and board members, let's see, I think we have some extra red ribbons over on the side table, by the way. Staff, did you all get yours? Okay. Red Ribbon Week was established in 1985 when U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration undercover agent Enrique Camarena was killed by drug traffickers. His family and friends wore red ribbons to honor him and to remind people of the damage alcohol and other drugs can do. Well, Red Ribbon Week now takes place across the nation. Locally, it's supported by the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse and Fighting Back. Yesterday, our district's secondary students pledged to be drug and alcohol-free. Board members, we have a whole list of activities at the various schools here on the dais and over on the side table. There have been school-wide announcements and bulletins announcing the significance of Red Ribbon Week, different activities at each secondary school. Posters, banners, and balloons are up to create awareness, and educational components are being used to teach about the harmful effect of drugs and alcohol. Board event organizer encourage you to attend and celebrate the campaign by wearing a red ribbon wristband, and you may want to catch some of these events at our schools.
It's a wristband, huh?
Oh, that's a wrist, well, you can, actually, you can wear it as a ribbon. I mean, how many different colors wristbands can you wear anyway? In our elementary district, gate testing for students in grades 2 through 5 is taking place. The testing is for both students who are currently enrolled in one of our elementary schools and for students who are not currently enrolled in our elementary district but who live within our district's elementary district's attendance boundaries. The gate referral forms are due before November 8. Questions can be directed to Harriet Whaley here at the district office, and we'll want to put the website up so that they'll know how to get a hold of Ms. Haley at 963-4338. Her extension is extension 315. The board heard a report on the use of federal jobs money at our last meeting. Most of the money will be used to support teaching positions. We're currently in negotiations with our bargaining units and will take proposals to the board for their decisions. The upcoming November ballot, our last board candidate forum, was staged earlier today by the Student Council at Open Alternative School. Student Council members prepared questions for the candidates about their views on education and topics of interest to the students. There weren't any questions about ice cream this year, I understand. I did see some of the questions. It was pretty cute to have a first grader stand up and forcefully deliver her question about why the candidates wanted to be on the school board. It was an excellent opportunity for students to identify issues important to them and listen to the candidates' views. All 4 of the board candidates to our districts that will appear on the November ballot were there to answer questions: Kate Parker, Monique Limon, Dean Nevins, and Lauren Mason. And I believe we have Mr. Mason in the audience, and I think that's it. And of course, we have Kate Parker here at the dais. Also on the ballot, November 2nd, are measures Q and R regarding school facilities. The board put these bond measures on the ballot because of the need to keep our 1.8 million square feet of space in good repair. If passed, bond funds will help us accomplish a number of improvements, such as upgrading classrooms, modernizing facilities, using energy savings methods, improving our security systems and emergency communication systems, providing modern classroom technology and computer and/or wireless connections at our schools. And this is just a partial list. There's much more information available, again, on our website. We posted a slide presentation on our website showing the current state of some of our facilities. The board brief. My office regularly issues a report to the board called the board brief. It's a collection of articles and information items on school and district matters. A copy of the October 15 board brief is on display out in the reception area. The last board brief included memos on such topics as elementary science education and high school senior contracts to participate in graduation ceremonies. Finally, I'd like to call your attention to a poster in the back of the room. Robin, could you hold that poster up, please? Thank you. It reflects work being done on Board Focus Goal 2. Board Focus Goal 2 is facilitating a positive and inclusive school culture and improved student safety. In fact, Board Focus Goal 2 was a subject discussed at length today by our principals in their meetings. One way the Board Focus Goal is being addressed in every classroom is an age-appropriate discussion of acceptance, respect, and no tolerance for bullying of any sort. The elementary district poster is one of the tools being used. When the secondary poster is ready, I'll be bringing it to a future board meeting as well. And that concludes the superintendent's board report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis. Just a couple comments. It's interesting, Red Ribbon Week has been around now for 25 years, and just as an aside, 25 years ago, I put an ad in the paper, a quarter-page ad on the Parents' Pledge, which said, in essence, hugs, not drugs, and it said, here's what we do in our house. Here's how our children are behave in our house and what's expected of them. I took flack for that for years from my 3 children, but the good news is none of them went into drugs, and so it worked. But it's a great program. It's been around 25 years, and they do a really good job, and it's something to really take to heart. Hugs, not drugs. And just today, regarding the bullying, the United States Department of Education put out an 11-page letter to school districts outlining situations where bullying can be a Civil Rights Act violation. And they make it very clear that as a board, we have to look at it, and as principals, they have to look at it, that there are civil rights issues involved, not just our policies involved. And so we'll all get a copy of it, but it's quite a lengthy document with examples of what they're talking about.
And we are reviewing that with our staff as well.
Any other comments on Dr. Sarvis? Yes. Or do you want to go to board comments?
Board comments.
Board comments, okay.
If I can go ahead and chime in on that, sort of a follow-up, yes, the OAS forum today, I obviously was one of the people that got to participate. It was really fun. It was delightful. I got to do it 4 years ago. It's nice to see this as a real long-term ongoing tradition. All of the forums have been really interesting. I do want to clarify a comment that I made at a previous forum, because I realized as I was saying it, and at some of the forums you only have 2 minutes to talk and there's no time to go back and say, wait. And at one of them, we were asked about English learners and the reclassification rate, and I made the comment that, as we heard here at the board, that at the secondary level, there's about a 3% annual. Well, what we heard was that there's a 3% reclassification rate in the secondary district, and so I said 3% reclassification rate in the secondary district, which means that 97% are not being reclassified. Well, what that means, of course, is in any given year, 97% of the kids are not being reclassified, but it's an annual rate. And so I wanted to be clear, especially because I've since heard somebody repeat this, that that's annual, and that by the time our students are in 12th grade, in fact, 40% of English learners are reclassified as fluent English proficient, both from our feeder elementaries, because they were reclassified when they were younger, and also from the work that we do in our secondary district. So I wanted to clarify on that. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was Sunday, Dr. Sarvis and Ms. Sawatsky and I were at the Anti-Defamation League's annual awards dinner, where they honor some of the wonderful work that community members do. And this year, their education honoree was Dr. Cynthia White. And it was a wonderful event and just so special for her, and it was great to see. And I was very proud that it was a member of our district that was up there getting that honor.
Mrs. Deacon?
Monday, I had the privilege of spending most of the day on a boat with fifth graders from Harding Elementary School, and I just wanted to share the participation of the Natural History Museum in a grant, a NOAA grant called Be Wet, which took our Harding Elementary Schools, and we've actually approved these field trips before. Out. It was supposed to go to Santa Cruz Island. There were heavy seas, and so we went up the coast instead. But I have to tell you that the students had a fabulous time and learned so much about how to be good stewards of the environment, and it was really a wonderful opportunity to spend the day with them and their teachers. I also wanted to briefly mention, you know, I'm the board liaison for the Santa Barbara Education Foundation. They have some new board members. Sal Garena from Padres Unidos is one of the new board members, Brian Robinson, who's a Harding parent, and Frank Stevens, who I'm sure most of you know, a former teacher in our schools. They've also received a number of grants. Montecito Bank and Trust Annual Community Dividends Grant is, they're one of the recipients of that. The Bauer Foundation, the Weingart Foundation, the Santa Barbara Arts Commission, and these are all funds that they in turn share with our school. So I think it's wonderful that they are able to work on these grants and bring this money to us. And November 4th through 7th, they're going to be participating in something called Pianos on State Street. So I hope everybody looks for that, because there's actually going to be a series of pianos as part of kind of like performance art up and down State Street. And that's also part of a fundraising effort. So so anyway, those are some of the really good things that they're doing, of course, participating in the Q&R bond campaign as well.
Mrs. Cordero?
Well, I just wanted to report on a couple of things. One is several of us, I think all of us here, attended the Lights On After School event last week at Franklin School, and it showcased the AOK program for after-school activities for our students. A number of schools had students performing. It was a really enjoyable event. Students participated in ballet folklorico dancing. They participated in hip-hop dances, in mariachi music. They just did a variety of activities. And there were many, many, many parents and families present, and dozens of students involved in the performances. So it was a wonderful evening. I also wanted to note, we all received a copy of the Santa Barbara High School Forge newspaper in our packet, in which they noted that the Don's Neck Cafe was one of only 3 schools nationwide who were recipients of an MTV award for, and I'm going to misstate the name of it, but basically it was for community service and community outreach for work with particularly underrepresented and low-income members of the community. So the Don's Neck Cafe has been signaled out previously. They were, I think, the first high school ever awarded the approval by the IRS to file income taxes online for their clientele. And this is another example of the work that they do. So I just think that that program at Santa Barbara High School deserves a really special acknowledgement, because they work very hard and they have been doing some tremendous things for quite a while already.
Thank you. I was able to go to Lacumba Junior High last week and sit in on an SBCEO portal training by Steve Keithley for the social studies and English departments, where Steve was teaching these 2 departments how to use the portal, which is basically $100,000 worth of assets that is available to every student, every family online, and how to use it within the classroom structure. It was a very good session, and I think the teachers enjoyed it. I also went to a basic aid discussion by all the districts in the area. They met to talk about basic aid, what's going on in basic aid, and all of them are very fearful about what might happen in the school budget, Mr. Smith, in May, and so their advice is don't spend that much money, be ready. So it'll be interesting to see how Mr. Smith feels about that. I went to Northside Rotary and was their luncheon speaker and presented their club with a certificate of appreciation for their 21 years of history with Adams School. They have groups there every day doing something. And Adams School is very lucky to have the North Side Rotary, and we thank them for their involvement. Career Day at La Cuesta, about 40 different representatives from the business community spent the morning at La Cuesta talking about their businesses. I sat in on one of the classes on geography, and it was fascinating. Mrs. Deacon attended probably most of the Wellness Committee meeting. I sat in on the first part of it, but they're doing a great job. I was very, very pleased with the participation. And the other thing, I've talked about it before, and when they came and we talked about this drink that you can buy now called Four Locos. It's got 3 times the alcohol in it than the average beer, but it looks like soft drink or power drink. I don't know if you saw it in today's paper or today's news. Kids up in upstate Washington were at a party, and I think 9 of them went to the hospital because they overdosed on this drink. And so it's something that parents need to be aware of. It's deadly. I did take a tour of the Linda Mood Bell facility. We used them for our special ed department and children. And Janelle there gave me a tour of what they do and how they do, and it was very, very interesting to see the results they get with children doing, their interventions. The debates. I attended 4 of the debates, and it was interesting. League of Women's Voters, SEAC, Esperanza, and Partners for Excellence. And what it revived in me as watching it, 1, I'm thankful I wasn't doing it, but 2, it reminded me of this is our constituency. These are the people that put us in office and what their expectations are, the questions they asked. We sit up here and we do a lot of stuff, but sometimes we got to step back and remember what's important to the people who put us here. And the questions that each of these groups prepared to the candidates and the answers really make you think. Really make you think. And I know Mrs. Deacon was at several of them too. We all attended a sexual harassment training session last Friday for, I think we all were there, yeah. And that's always interesting. And we had Mrs. Park and I went to a Masters in Governance conference last Saturday on student learning and achievement. And it couldn't have been a more timely topic than what we're involved in today. So a lot going on, and it's a pleasure to participate in all these things. Announcement of closed session items. B1, student discipline. We'll have motions on that coming later in the agenda. B2, public employee discipline, dismissal, release. Motion was made by Cordero, seconded by Deacon, to accept a resignation of a teacher with agreed upon conditions. The motion passed 4-0 with 1 absent, Dr. Noel. Dr. Noel will not be with us tonight. He's still not feeling too good. And so any motion we pass, there'll be 1 absent, that'll be Dr. Noel. B3, B4, and B5, all conference with labor negotiator for CSEA, SBTA, and management. Nothing to report. C4 is public comments. Before we go to public comment board, I'd like to see if you agree. We have a lot of public reaction or public comment to D10, which is on the consent calendar. I would like your approval to let us move that from the consent calendar to the first action on the action item. And we'll talk about it as the first item under action. Is that agreeable?
Yeah.
Okay. So public comment, I think we can do it, yeah. So under public comments, if you're here to speak on D10, we're going to be talking about that very quickly, okay? And so you might not want to do it under public comments, but you can. Consent agenda. Oh, public comment. Oh, other public comment. Okay. Oh.
Okay, Kenneth Locke, followed by Christina Aguirre-Kolb, followed by Corey Bream.
My name is Kenneth Locke. I spoke before the city council. I'm doing some work and should be of value to the community if it's in relation to education. I talked to them about the whole concept of mind-body integration. I just did a video I just put up on YouTube called Mind-Body Examination. And to examine somebody or to give somebody an exam or a test in relation to the integration of the mind and body, it's important that the student has some knowledge to go with. I'm sorry to say that historically our educational system has not provided students with the means for understanding what a mind-body integration is. How you understand the integration is actually through a discipline that actually provides the means for that understanding. It has to kind of come full circle. I became enlightened to how that is in relation to the fine art form of painting, and then why we actually had the abstract art movement of the 20th century in relation to the evolution of human consciousness, and then also through the athletic exercise of tennis. So I could be used as a kind of a standard that in relation to the integration of the mind and body, kind of for 21st century and so forth. Right now, the education that the children are receiving right now is not interdisciplinary also, so it doesn't integrate their minds and bodies, and it's not interdisciplinary. So the paradigm shift here that education has to actually it has to reform itself. I think I've mentioned this to you before in the past, and bring it into the interdisciplinary, understand the basis of these standards. Right now in this school, there's no yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi. I don't know if they have these kids are being taught these disciplines in school right now. Okay, but by a teacher who has the authority, in relation to the mind-body integration. If I could get a name of a person who I could make contact with. Okay, yeah, I'll be in touch with Mr. Jarvis, and I'll get the name of the person who's in charge of that, and I can actually kind of, again, examine the mind-body integration, what they make reference to, how these disciplines are actually accomplishing that integration. And it would be great to see a student that actually would graduate from this education, the standard of that. So, because what I'm going to be doing is I'll be laying out what's 30 seconds?
20 seconds.
20
Sorry.
seconds. The whole basis of a mind-body integration, it requires a teacher who actually has the ability to teach a discipline in relation to that integration. If you don't have one, you don't have one. So that'll be cut and dry. So I'll make, when I make contact with this person, I'll report back to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. Christina Aguirre-Cole, followed by Corey Bream.
Hi. I came and spoke to you last school year, and as a school psychologist in the school district, I feel it's important for you to know, for you to gauge the temperature of the situation given the 3 school psychologists that were cut last year. We met on Wednesday, September 29th with our Executive Director of Special Education to discuss the workload impact on all of us. And Dr. Mills and even our special education in-service presenter, the lawyer, emphasized the need to conduct not only excellent initial assessments, but triennials as well. And we should be covering and completing all areas of suspected disability. Well, given our workload, we cannot do it because of the present numbers of personnel. And if we look at the largest school in the school district with the biggest number of special education students, the full-time psychologist is in charge of all the initials, all the manifest determinations, all the meetings for at-risk students, those student study team meetings, as well as all the counseling that's required on the IEPs for our special education students. And that leaves the half-time psychologist to sort of scramble and fill in the gaps with the triennials that are left. And to be blunt, we don't have enough time to do all the work that we're being asked to do. Even at the smallest site with the lowest number of special education students, we're still extremely overworked, and the workload is a lot. At the beginning of the school year, we were all called to assist in the tragedy that occurred on 154 for our Franklin student. And if we are to be working on the important aspects of our job, but set it aside, and when we're called for these crises, you can see that we're running out of more time as it continues. And we are trained to help others deal with emotionally stressful circumstances, and we're not inhuman to stress ourselves, basically. And even with last year's staffing levels, this year would not have been an easy one due to the several trauma incidents we've dealt with in this district. And with the decrease in staff and increase in expected output, we're feeling the stress that our professional training is designed to alleviate. So we understand cutbacks are a reality, but the reality is that we're dealing with life and death issues, and each and every week. And
30 seconds.
We're experienced, we're organized, we're not coming to complain, we're letting you know the reality of the situation. We've discussed ways to streamline, and the one way we can think, you're not gonna like it, we would like 2 full-time psychologist positions back so that we can meet the timelines, we can stay in compliance. We're not gonna keep any legal issues coming back into this district, we keep them out. And we put the needs of the students first. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aguirre-Kolb. Corey Bream.
Much taller. Will it hold? There. I want to start off by thanking the board, listening to your list of things you do. It's pretty amazing. You don't get paid much, and you donate a lot of your time to go to these events, and thank you. I'm certain that when you go to conferences, debates, plays, etc., you're not actually seeing some of the teacher involvement. And when you brought up the bullying, it reminded me of my situation with bullying with my son, and I just want to say that education is so important. The more you educate, the more your staff will be motivated, and it still is a problem. They're not going to walk you around to the teacher that, like the teacher that's still employed that never got reprimanded on any level for showing other students how to exclude my son because he was different. He was in the room, so he was integrated, but he never got called on, asked a question. He was seated at the back. He wasn't included in many, many, many things they did that year, and it was all the teacher leading the way on this example. And I complained many times, talked to them, and tried to find ways to correct that, and it never really worked. So I want to say that your teachers need more education, and you probably won't even see it. And with the policies in place with the union, I think it's hard to remove a bad teacher, and principals, perhaps in my experience from watching them, are even maybe afraid to say too much or reprimand them with a write-up because it isn't the right time to write them up or whatever. But these actions are still occurring, and that teacher's still doing the same thing to other students 2-3 years later. Anyway, so I also want to bring up that when my son was being bullied by another student, that student was threatening his life, and the police can't get involved because it's the district, and the teachers really didn't handle the situation at all. And I don't want to bring all that up again. It is in the past, but I want to say that I love the phrase I heard when I got everyone to acknowledge, because 3 teachers did, pull the irate, strange acting child off my son as he was yelling, "I'm going to kill you." And it took 3 teachers to get him off because he's so strong and he was strangling my son. So with that in mind, I want you to hear what the principal told me. These are your principals that you train. Although we agree he's bullying your son, there's no policy in place to handle a bullying child. There you go. That's what I did. I went, what? Are you serious? So
30 seconds.
I just want to bring up that more education is needed, more policy is needed, and please continue on a positive measure towards bullying, because we see it in the news. It's still out there, and it's still in our schools, and unfortunately some of our teachers are giving an example. I also want to bring up the 13-page California Department of Education write-up on what bullying is. No one in my school had seen when I printed it and handed it out at the IEP.
Thank you, Ms. Bream. Okay.
Mr. Heron, we do have clear policies on bullying, and we have been reviewing those with our principals, and we will check with Ms. Bream as to whether that's a recent statement she heard. No, it's not. Okay. Okay, I see. Thank you.
Okay, we do have 3 additional speakers who indicated their desire to speak on item D10, so I will hold those until we take up that item.
Okay. C5, acceptance of donations.
Move to accept with gratitude.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, 4-0, 1 absent. Okay, the consent agenda.
Yes, D5 has been withdrawn.
Mrs. Parker? No?
I'll move to,
Okay.
did you have others that we want to pull? Okay, 10 is pulled, D5 is withdrawn, and I'll go ahead and move that we approve the remainder of the consent agenda items.
Second?
Under discussion, I would like just to make a comment on one line item under consultants. Dr. Carol Miller, special ed communication, is an extension from 5/1/10 to 6/30/11. And at the last meeting, we extended it to 9/30 with a $15,000 not to exceed. If you recall, when we approved this expenditure, we approved a $30,000 contract for a consultant, and that was Dr. Miller. I personally would have preferred to see this come back as a extension of that contract on an action item with a review of what has taken place over 5 months, what the expectation is for the next 9 months, for 15 days is what it amounts to of work in the next 9 months. I would have liked to seen a little bit more explanation on that and treat it as an extension of a contract rather than just a line item. I'm full faith in Dr. Miller. It's nothing to do with Dr. Miller as a person. I would just like to have seen a little bit more explanation as to why we need her for another 9 months. And is there an expectation that because we approved $60,000, is there going to be another $15,000 added in there at some point in the next 9 months? I would have liked to see it handled a little differently. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, 4-0 with 1 absent. Okay, we'll go to action item, and we'll take D10 as the first item. Approval of exponent proposal for air quality evaluation at Washington Elementary School.
And Derek Smith, our Deputy Superintendent, will introduce this item.
The board had previously received information on air quality issues at Washington Elementary School. We met with a concerned group of citizens regarding this issue. We talked about what had occurred in the past and what our understanding would be going forward. One of the things that was expressed was that a certified industrial hygienist wasn't used in the testing in the past. We agreed to find a mutually acceptable CIH. I was gone for a couple of weeks on vacation, so I didn't move as quickly as possible. We put forth somebody based on a recommendation from SIS2, who's our property and liability insurance carrier. The parents group, basically was opposed to that recommendation and put forth their own person, who I do not believe is a qualified CIH. At that point, we were kind of at loggerheads. But knowing that there was a specter of a public health issue, we felt it was prudent to move forward. It's my understanding, based on emails that I've received from that group, that basically anybody that we put forward or SIS puts forward is not going to be acceptable to them. We think it's prudent to move forward. It's in the best interest of the district, and we're asking you to approve this at this time.
Okay, we'll take the public comment now. We'll start with David Shapiro, followed by Jeanette Hope, followed by Lisa Fell.
Thank you for having me. I'm David Shapiro, and I'm working with a group of concerned parents that are an expert group of parents. I've spoken to you before. Our group, we have 4 physicians, one of whom who'll be speaking after me is Jeanette Hope, who is a specialist in environmental medicine. She sits on the she sits on the board of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. She has national stature. She's consulted with representatives of the French EPA equivalent. She's considered one of the leaders in the country in the field of environmental health. We have 3 other physicians. We also have a professor of environmental health in our group, William Bucky, and a former dean of Ventura College. Our group of parents became very concerned about the history of the indoor air quality and the response of both the district and SISC over the past 6 years. And in looking over the past 6 years, there have been multiple complaints, both from staff and from parents. There have been actually 6 tests performed since 2004. And in no case were any of these tests performed even close to meeting minimal standards of acceptability. And beyond the fact that 6 tests were performed at a subpar level, the people who conducted the tests, probably more egregiously, took on the role of expert interpretation and actually gave advice to staff and to students about returning to class, having actually misread their own data that they had. For example, the EPA has a guideline that total mold spore count should never exceed 1,000. Many people suggest 250 should be a upper range number. And a spore count of 2,700 was obtained in the library at Washington after complaints by the school librarian, Ms. Sumsky. Ms. Sumsky was advised to go back to class. She'd been complaining of headaches and sickness, and she's been back to class, and she's still saying she doesn't feel right. So we have a history going back 6 years of 6 different tests, multiple complaints, excuse me, and we've essentially, as a group of experts looking at this, have lost faith in the school district and in SISC in their integrity in handling this problem. So we met with Dr. Sarvis and Mr. Hetchonk and Mr. Smith, and we had what felt was a good meeting. And Mr. Smith is right, we agreed on finding a mutually acceptable tester at a CIH level. And we proposed a tester, they proposed a tester. Our concern with their tester is that it is not to do with him personally. He seems to have a perfectly qualified CV, but we just have lost credibility
30 seconds.
in SISC, in the district. And given this credibility loss, we feel that as a group of experts, we want to be actually having a truly outside, truly independent person coming to bear in this. Having somebody working within the fabric of the SISC and the district, which have clear self-protective responsibilities, will not satisfy us, and we will be satisfied with an outside excellent tester. If there's objections to the credentials of who we put forth, we could put someone else forth.
Thank you, Mr. Shapiro. Dr. Shapiro. Jeanette Hope, followed by Lisa Fell.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Hope. I'm a family practice and environmental medicine physician, and as Dr. Shapiro stated, I have familiarity with issues in this field. I am the person who had some experience with the tester that was recommended. I had seen the work that he completed and was very impressed with the thoroughness of his work and the testing that he completed. When we're looking at indoor air quality issues, there are a number of things that come into play. Clearly, the ventilation CO2 rates, VOCs, and issues relating to mold and mycotoxins. The testing that was done in the past, many of the results did raise significant concerns, which did make us nervous about relying on this testing in the future. Some of the things that can be tested for that have not been in the past include other problems associated with water damage, which are, aside from mold and mold spores, you have the chemicals produced by molds, which are mycotoxins, some of them very dangerous, aflatoxin being one of the most carcinogenic natural substance, mycotoxins from other molds, very neurotoxic, immunotoxic, as well as VOCs being carcinogenic. When you test, it is easy to miss what is there. And as a physician, I like to know what is there. I heard the analogy of biopsying for a cancer. If you look in the wrong place, you're going to miss it. That's very easy to have happen. And you either will be falsely reassured and the problem will continue and there will be great harm, or you won't feel comfortable and you'll keep looking. And I think this group is at the point where they want to keep looking with somebody that they trust will do a thorough job. I forgot to mention bacteria and endotoxins are also a significant health threat. And the tester we proposed is very qualified. He is under the same credentialing group as the CIH. That their group has a little more focus on indoor air quality concerns. He's employed by a school district. There really is no concerns about credentials whatsoever. However, the group would be comfortable using a tester that they felt would test to the depth that they would like to see happen. So,
Thank you, Dr. Hope.
Thanks.
Lisa Fell, followed by Lane Wheeler.
Hello, I'm Lisa Fell, the PTO president at Washington School, and thank you for hearing me. I represent the parents at Washington, and I've spoken to PTO board members and other parents at the school. We've reviewed the history of this issue and the previous testing that has occurred, and we just really want to stress the importance of finding a mutually agreeable tester that would be agreeable to both the district and the expert-led Indoor Air Quality Committee in PEPS. We've just seen what's happened in the past, and we feel like this would be the only way to ensure that this testing is done appropriately. So we'd really like to postpone the date of the testing to allow time to find a tester that would be agreeable to both groups. And also we'd like to have representatives from this committee of PEPS present during the testing. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fell. Lane Wheeler.
Hello. Hello, Lane Wheeler, Santa Barbara Teachers Association. The Santa Barbara Teachers Association has a concern that we find the most capable and appropriate tester and follow the best procedures possible, as we are concerned about the safety of our students that we teach and with the daily exposure to teachers that are in portables, and if there in fact is found to be some sort of toxic environment there. We have a number of portables spread throughout the district, and it is a well-known fact that some of those portables exceed 20, 30, even up to 40 years in age. I know the district's been very aggressive as money's prevent to eradicate those older portables, which is commendable, but we have people in daily association with the portables, and we are concerned about the safety of our employees and, of course, the safety of the students that our employees serve. One other concern that's of note is that oftentimes with secondary students, and even now in the elementary, kids are moving from class to class to class. So we believe this may be a very broad-based concern that exposure, if something is found, could be to an entire school site and oftentimes to many employees. Oftentimes employees are in those rooms not only 185 days a year, but oftentimes up to 300 days a year, because they're on weekends, or they're on after school extended periods of time, and then oftentimes during the summer. So we know that the district will take this seriously and will proceed in the most judicious fashion, and we commend you for the work that you've done to bring this forward, and we encourage you to find the best and most appropriate method to assess the information that's out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. That concludes public comment on this item.
I do have a comment from Dr. Noel. If appropriate, I'll read it into the record. In my opinion, and I can't give the intonation that Dr. Noel would give it in any way, shape, or form, so I'm just going to read it. And Bob, I'm sorry when you're watching this. In my opinion, any issue involving the health of kids and teachers should receive a full airing, preferably as an item on a future agenda, action, or consent. This parent group includes medical and technical expertise far superior to that employed by the district. We owe it to the kids to listen to these MDs and PhDs with careful attention. The parent group may have irritated some by talking of non-compliance with the law, and some of its members may have sounded a bit confrontational at times. I, for one, don't find this hard to understand. Who among us would not speak out forcefully if she or he felt that the district classrooms pose health hazards for her or his children? Further, wasn't it the district that first brought in a lawyer? That was escalation, not conciliation. The way I see the history of this issue, The district has a lot to be defensive about, and board members have a fiduciary duty to act in the best interest of the district. At the same time, the board members have a moral duty to protect the welfare of the students and employees. For me, the moral always trumps the fiscal. Dr. Bob Noel. You want that for the record? Yeah. Questions or comments from the board?
Okay, I'll start. First of all, I want to clarify, and thank you, Mr. Scholder, for all the work that you've done. It's been incredibly helpful, some of the information that we got about the person that's proposed here, Mr. Jeffrey Hicks. In the past, we have not used as highly qualified a tester. So the district now is trying to do the right thing and pull in a highly qualified tester, and in particular looking to pull in a certified industrial hygienist. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think the one exception wasn't Mr. Hicks used at Dos Pueblos at one time.
I think
Dave?
I'm
Just
speaking
specific to Washington.
specifically to Washington.
That
on
would be
this
a
issue.
correct statement.
Okay. And the person they proposed is not a certified industrial hygienist. Is that
That's
correct?
our understanding.
For me, I personally want the most qualified person to come in. And if that means somebody with this CIH qualification, then I think that that is the right thing to do. I'm not wedded to Mr. Hicks in particular. I do feel like it needs to be done as soon as possible. But if there are others that are would be more mutually agreeable, if this group can come up with either somebody that they feel is just as qualified but would be more independent, or if they take a look, I think what might be helpful on everybody's part is to take a look at some of the results that any tester has done and see some sample reports, so that everybody has some peace of mind about the work that they do and it's not just looking at a CV. I feel like as a board, however, that we need to be careful because we're looking at Washington. Washington does not have nearly as many portables as other schools, and it doesn't have portables that are nearly as old at other schools. And so I really would like to see as a district that we have a testing, sampling process in place that takes into account what's going on at all of our schools and not just at one. I'm concerned if it's something that's just parent concerns at one particular classroom or teachers' concerns, and those need to be addressed. But a lot of times parents won't know or won't bring it up, or things seem fine and it's not until later that it feels like maybe there's a problem. And so I really do want to see something systemic put in place.
Mrs. Deacon?
Well, I have to say that was one of my first reactions as well when I read this, is that we know we have lots of old portables, and clearly these ones at Washington have raised concerns, but kind of begs the question, what are we doing about the other portables? And maybe if Measure R passes, some of those portables will just go away completely and we won't have to deal with them at all. But I guess my position is basically it's a given we have to proactively ensure the safety of our students, whether it's air quality, playgrounds, water quality. All I care about is that we have someone qualified to do this. I know there was reference to trying to find a mutually acceptable tester. Mr. Hicks seems to have fine credentials, but this group has expressed a lack of trust, I guess, in CISC. Since we're paying for this, our insurance is not covering this. So regardless of who we use, it doesn't have to be a CISC person, is that correct?
No, and actually, I mean, it came at the recommendation of CISC, but I guess it begs the question, if it came as a recommendation surely from the district, would we have the same outcome?
I don't know. I mean, I guess that's where the mutually agreeable part comes back into play.
Which is where we started.
I know. Well, I guess I'd like to hear maybe a little bit of discussion about whether you think there's still a possibility to find someone that would be agreeable to everybody.
Mrs. Cordero?
Well, I share your question, Mr. Smith. I don't know what the what the acceptable alternative will be for the parent group, assuming that we're not willing to just say we will choose whoever they recommend, or whomever they recommend. And I agree that we should have the most qualified person. But, and here's the rub, I also feel that having gone through the whole situation that we had with special ed, where parent groups became very active and very vocal and very concerned, I don't think we will be solving the problem if we move forward without somehow reaching some kind of mutual sort of acceptability with the parent group. I was hoping that maybe we could recommend a limited time in which to negotiate and find a suitable alternative. And if at the end of that time no suitable alternative has been found, we will approve Mr. Hicks. Because I agree that we should not let this drag on indefinitely. I think we need to have something systemic, so I'd like to have this one taken care of so that we can move on to looking at a more systemic approach. We do have many other school campuses that have older portables in place. If this is found to be a factor, if the age is in fact, as I have to imagine it probably is, a factor in the air quality, then that becomes something that we should really be more, applying to more of our other campuses. So I would like to suggest that maybe we take, they offer 3 more names, we offer 3 more names. If we can't settle on one of them, we come to this.
Just a point of clarification is CIH is still a prerequisite.
I would say yes.
Mr. Heron, may I offer?
Dr. Sarvis.
Look, we very much care about the health of our students, and we've heard all sorts of accusations, unfounded accusations. We agreed to bring in a specialist with licensing as a certified industrial hygienist, and having found a specialist, he was summarily rejected by this group, and I believe that any name that we present would be summarily rejected. Knowing that, we offered a resolution. In fact, not only was he summarily rejected, we were told that no, we had to choose the person of their selection who is not a certified industrial hygienist, as we agreed the person had to be. So knowing that, we told the group that they were free to bring in their own person to shadow the testing. I believe that that's an appropriate thing to do. But we need data, and we need data soon. And I still think that's an appropriate alternative. We did turn to Joe Shoulder for legal advice on this because we wanted to resolve it. It's my understanding that when we made that offer to this group, they did not respond to that offer. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did respond to it.
They did not. At least they
That's
did
it,
not.
okay.
Okay. But we need to do this testing. We need accurate data. I mean, we need to know where we stand on this. And I do not want to go through the process of finding 3 more people to have 3 more people rejected. It's very clear that any names we present will be rejected. So I'm asking you to approve this proposal, to again offer to allow someone to come in and shadow the testing. It's very important to us that this data be accurate and that the analysis and conclusions drawn be accurate. And I think that's where we're left. If you'd like to ask Joe Shoulder more about it, he's here tonight. We asked him to be here just because of his knowledge at this point about this. Dave Hetyoung knows a lot more about this, but I think we need to go forward.
Mrs. Parker?
I understand, Dr. Sarvis, and I know that this can be really frustrating sometimes, but I do feel like this is a case where we need to be clear as a board that it does need to be something that's mutually agreed upon, that it's not something that is just from the outside. But I do think if we give 2 more weeks, for example, if this comes back to us on November 9th, that would give an opportunity for further discussion, without, I hope, compromising health any further than it might be being compromised now. I do think it's important that we not drag this out, that we do need the data. I also think that beyond, we should bring up, because we haven't talked about this, parents could always bring in a second person. And if they want somebody completely different than what we can agree upon, then that's always an alternative. But I also think that beyond that, they should have access to, that parents should be able to attend when the sampling's going on, and be part of that process as well.
Although during testing, you don't want to stack the room with.
Exactly. I don't mean inside the room. I just mean observing. Nothing that would affect results.
I'll just make a couple comments. The main thing that bothers me is the comment that they can see nothing wrong with Mr. Hicks, and that it's the past that causes the problem. Now, I can tell you, I wasn't here during that past, nor was Mrs. Deacon. Best I can see, it hasn't been a topic of discussion in the last 2 years since I've been on the board. Maybe I missed something, but it looks like it's 204 to 206. I think it's totally unfair to be talking, to use the past against this particular board at this particular time when there's nothing absolutely wrong with the inspector that has been chosen. I mean, there's not a thing wrong. Everybody agrees there's not a thing wrong with him. And to discount him out of hand because of that bothers me. And number two, we talk about, we want truly independent. But throughout Dr. Shapiro's document, he talked about ours. We want our person. I don't think that's truly independent. If you had left all those out and said, hey, we want to find somebody totally unrelated to us or anybody else, and it's totally independent, but when you start talking about you want somebody who is yours, that bothers me greatly too. But Mr. Cordero, I think had the answer to you, Dr. Sarvis, because if we give 3 names and they're totally unacceptable, then in 2 weeks it goes to Mr. Hicks. So I think that that eliminates the possibility that they would say arbitrarily no to any 3 names. If there are 6 more people out there that can do this job in the next 2 weeks. I mean, what bothers me is this could be done by next week. I mean, the testing could be done, and our children would be, at least we'd know where we stand with the children. To delay it, in one hand we say, well, we want to protect our children, the other hand, oh, but delay it, because it's not that important to find out what's involved. We have a truly independent person that has no bearing with any of us, has no history with us. It just seems strange that there's this kind of acrimony based upon the past when we're looking forward.
Can I just add a couple of things? You're absolutely right. I mean, if the board did approve this agreement, they would mobilize and be out there by the end of the week. And as you can see from the agreement, it's going to take 21 days for the lab to basically process it and get us the results. I think the other thing that speaks to what you were saying, Board President Herron, is that throughout these emails, I'm not a scientist. I'm not qualified to basically look at methodology, determine whether it's sufficient. However, there's an underlying allegation that somehow there's some kind of pressing health concern, and I've never seen any empirical evidence that shows me, that's been produced by anybody, that shows there's actually a health issue. So I want to see that if that's out there. I'm not saying that, we don't need to go forward. We do need to go forward, but it's a theme that seems to run through these emails, and I'm greatly disturbed by it.
Mr. Cordero?
Well, I want to address a couple of things. One is, I think in whatever we do, it's very important for the group of parents to understand that this is a district decision to make, and I think we should do it in a way that tries to be as mutually acceptable as possible. But even given that, it still is ultimately a decision that the district personnel will make. And so I would never want to give any suggestion that I would be recommending that we automatically take a recommendation from a public group when we're the ones who ultimately bear the responsibility for that decision. However, given that, Mr. Smith, I think you've stated something that I felt was very important, that we don't feel or at least your office doesn't feel, I assume that's true for the rest of the administration, that there has been any clear evidence that there is an unhealthful situation in existence. If that is true, if we're right about that, then delaying the process for another couple of weeks shouldn't be a significant, hazard in any way. My point, though, as Mr. Heron rightly pointed out, was in suggesting that if we don't reach mutual agreement, that we would support Mr. Hicks, is precisely to give the parent organization an incentive to reach an agreement, because they have basically one shot at coming up with something that we all can agree to. If not, we're going to just go with the person that we wanted in the first place. But I also want Mr. Heron, as someone who was very active for more than 20 years in school district policies prior to my serving on the board, I understand why a group would hold this board accountable for things that previous boards and previous personnel had done, because it is the district that acted in those times. Even though there's a turnover of personnel, the district is still, as I was saying earlier, ultimately responsible for the decisions that got made. So I don't think it's unreasonable for people to hold us as a district accountable for our history. However, with that said, I think if we're going to move forward on this, if we are going to do this and try to reach a mutual agreement, then we need to go into it in a good faith effort with the assumption that we will take people at their word, and we will, because if not, then there really is no point in doing it. So either we move forward with a good faith effort that people will try to reach agreement and trust that that we're all doing this for appropriate reasons. And I think if we can't do that, then we may as well just approve it now.
Mrs. Parker.
Thank you, Mrs. Cordero, and I do think that your proposal is a good one. I just want to say, however, that I don't think it's fair to implicate that parents that want to delay this are doing it frivolously, or that are doing it based on history. I think that there's just a concern that this time they want to be sure it's done right, and even if that takes a little bit more time. And so I want to be sure that we all have that opportunity to make sure that it's done right. I personally think Mr. Hicks, like the parents, I'd say, he has excellent qualifications, and if that's the way it ends up, that's fine.
May I ask for this consideration? Just going out and finding these people is not all that easy, and we want to research them. We want to make sure that they have credentials like this. May we include Mr. Hicks as one of those three?
If I may speak.
He's already been summarily dismissed, so why would you do that?
Well, but you've also heard, as have I, that they don't have any objections to Mr. Hicks. It's simply that we presented the name.
What is the expectation of these 6? That they all are going to come here, look at the situation, and give a bid as to what their services would cost? Or is just 3 names out of a hat and talk about 6 people?
6.
I just wanted to comment that I'm not even wedded to the number 6. If each person comes up with 2 additional suggestions, or whatever seems I don't, because personally, I don't know how many of these qualified people exist out there. So I don't know if finding 3 more and 3 from this group, if finding 6 additional people is even doable, or if finding 2 additional people is more doable. I don't know. And maybe we need to talk about that a little bit, or leave it up to staff to determine. But I would suggest that we just maybe, I wouldn't suggest that we bring them all here for a major bid. I think that's beyond the scope.
Mr. Deacon?
A couple of things. Well, first of all, I don't want to make this more onerous for staff in terms of having to spend a lot of time going back and duplicating what you've already done. On the other hand, I do think Mrs. Cordero did have a good compromise suggestion that if we can get everybody back to the table one more time and kind of a good faith effort, see if there might not be, in fact, a way to find someone mutually agreeable. And maybe the parents might even consider Mr. Hicks again after further discussion with you. I read his CV. He looks eminently qualified, and so I am a little bit disturbed that just because he's someone brought forward by the district necessarily makes him someone that has to be discounted. I don't know if there's other equally qualified people out there. On the other hand, if the parents don't trust him by the sheer fact of where he's from, they're not going to trust his results. And then we're going to be back where we started, possibly with more complaints. And I think Mrs. Cordero made a good point about, and you raised this as well, that there are no, as we know, no evident health issues affiliated or associated with the portables right now. So maybe the extra time is worth it.
I guess I'm sort of against the compromise from the standpoint that it doesn't make any sense to me, because all the district has to do is say no, and we've got Mr. Hicks. What kind of, what kind of discussion is that? I mean, they could come up with 2, 3, 4, 5 names, and we say no, we want Mr. Hicks. No agreement, we get Mr. Hicks. And we may be saying no for very, very good reasons, but it's not going to come across that way. We're going to be, once again, on the short end. It just seems to me to discount this one proposal because of past history and nothing to do with the individual, I think is the wrong approach. Do we have a motion?
Yes, I would move that we would direct staff to provide additional names, maybe at 3 at the most, solicit additional names from the parent organization, have a meeting before our next board meeting to see if they can reach a mutually agreeable alternative, and if not, we will again consider Mr. Hicks for approval. And okay, so that's the motion.
And the names, just to clarify, of our qualified certified industrial hygienist.
Yes, yes.
Second.
Further discussion?
Well, I would just like to say that I agree that there's no incentive, there's no built-in incentive for the district to negotiate, but I trust that with the professionalism of our staff, that they will negotiate in good faith. I'm sure that will happen. I'm sure that will be true.
And I'd like to say I'm certainly hopeful the parents will negotiate in good faith as well. I mean, we want a resolution here. It's not, it shouldn't be battle of the experts. It should be doing what's right and clarifying whether in fact there really is a problem.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 4-0 with Dr. Noel absent. Thank you for you bringing this to us, and we hopefully will see you back in 2 weeks. And it will be on the action item agenda. Unless it's unanimous and there's no dissent, it might be on the consent calendar. E1, approval of fiscal crisis and management assistant team to perform a management assistance study and evaluation of the district's payroll function.
And Eric Smith, our Deputy Superintendent, will make this presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis. From time to time, we utilize the state's fiscal crisis and management assistance team to provide us management assistance. Recently, we had a resignation of our payroll coordinator in our payroll department. We've wanted to do some more thorough investigation in that department for some time. At this point in time, we believe we could retain FCMAT to really do a thorough review of the processes, systems, and procedures and functionality of payroll. As you can see, we've laid out a proposed scope. We'd be asking them to provide reasonable assurance that payroll transactions are entered by properly authorized personnel and that those transactions are accurately summarized to the salary and benefit compensation. Provide assurance that timekeeping and payroll operating systems are secured from unauthorized changes and that proper internal controls are in place. Evaluate the division of labor and segregation of duties between classified and management employees in the payroll department. We have a concern about upward delegation in that department. Review the payroll department workflow and staffing. Hopefully provide recommendations regarding the feasibility of implementing a supplemental payroll. Right now, we only run an end-of-the-month payroll. We don't run a mid-month payroll like most school districts do. Determine the feasibility of eliminating the certificated split payroll in December and January. Right now, our certificated employees basically receive their December check in January. Evaluate our desk manuals and procedures for the department's employees. Review the integration of position control with payroll and personnel. Verify that districts are in compliance with the CalSTRS system regarding employer-employee contributions. Also verify that the district's in compliance with CalPERS regarding employee-employer payments and contributions. Review unemployment compensation process to make sure that we're consistent with the reporting processes for the Office of Unemployment Compensation. And lastly, to ensure that federal and state withholding allowances claimed by district employees agreed with withholding allowances entered in the payroll system. The cost to retain FCMAT would be $16,000. I think it's money well spent. Obviously, we've had issues with payroll in this district for a long time. It's not something that's a recent occurrence. I think right now we have an opportunity to get in there and really have unfettered access and really take a good look at it. And given that we're going to be moving to a new financial system next fiscal year, I think it's very timely that we do it. And so we're asking for you to approve this item.
Any comments on this? Public comment? Public comment.
We'll go with public comment first. Mr. Lane Wheeler.
Thank you, Lane Wheeler, Santa Barbara Teachers Association. We appreciate the leadership that Eric Smith and his department has brought to this issue. I believe we all recognize that it's been an ongoing issue, and we believe that from a structural standpoint, there are the significant changes that are being moved into place that will correct this problem once and for all, hopefully, and that the use of FCMAT, again, would be a way to provide both transparency and expert view of ways that we need to move forward in a proper and judicious fashion. And we'll also give employees and the public a chance to comment if as it's appropriate. We don't like to see the money spent, but we really do need to get a handle on this. My office spent a number of hours in the last couple of weeks going over particular payrolls to see if there were abnormalities in that cycle, and we found a number. We did this in collaboration with Mr. Smith's office, and we really do want to see this issue resolved as quickly and as efficiently as possible. But once again, to also put in place those key parameters that are going to keep this process on the straight and narrow and get people paid on time. So we do commend this effort, and we hope that you make a wise and judicious decision in this case. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. That concludes public comment.
Okay. Comments from the board? Mrs. Deegan?
Mr. Smith, can we ask FICMAT to take the crisis out of their acronym? I don't see this as a crisis. I see this as an ongoing issue, and you know, it bubbled up recently, but nevertheless, I completely believe that this is something that we are ready to do, need to do, can benefit from, and unfortunately, because of budget cuts, we've cut staff. We're understaffed already for administrators compared to other districts our size, and because otherwise I'm sure we'd be asking staff to do this, but in many ways it's more economical to use a consultant to do this kind of thing rather than hire another person full-time. I'm hopeful that if we approve this, and I would like to, that then we have basically marching orders for the new payroll coordinator who comes in so that they know exactly what to do and how to do it, and I like the idea of working with other departments that payroll interfaces with, because I think that's really key. It affects all of our staff, not just the accounting and payroll staff. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you.
Ms. Deacon, given your comment, which I think is very appropriate, the use of crisis in that title gets used over and over by people saying, oh gosh, this is a crisis, that's a crisis. Perhaps we could once again help the public to understand why FICMAT was created and what it has evolved to, because it goes well, the expertise of FICMAT goes well beyond just crisis intervention.
Is that a segue?
That's a segue.
Mr. Smith.
I just know a little bit about it, and having been a staffer for a year and working on over 50 studies with them. FICMAT was created in 1991 through AB 1200, which was sponsored by Delina Easton after the bankruptcy of Richmond Unified School District. And at the same time that an emergency appropriation was apportioned to Richmond, the legislature created the state's fiscal crisis and management assistance team. When it was created, the thought was always that it would be housed in a county office, and that it would be essentially a SWAT team of experts that could both provide intervention in fiscally troubled school districts, but also would provide a management assistance component that could help with any of the school business management disciplines, including budgeting, accounting, purchasing, facilities, maintenance, operations, risk management, food service, et cetera, et cetera. The state submitted an RFP to county offices. 3 responded. Kern County was the successful RFP recipient. Interestingly enough, in the RFP process, there was never any mention of it ever going out again, so it's been seated in the Kern County Superintendent of Schools since that time. When FICMAT was first created, a lot of districts were really afraid of it because of the name, because as Brian mentioned, the fiscal crisis portion, but as it's evolved over time, you've probably seen some of their graphics, like 90% of their work is in management assistance. There's very few school districts that have failed in the state of California because of the interventions that are in place as a result of AB 1200 that set up the whole protocol relative to county offices intervening before school districts, ran out of money and ultimately became insolvent. So that's kind of a thumbnail sketch. Like I said, I know a little bit about it.
Thank you. Mrs. Parker.
Oh, and one other thing I should mention, because I know a little bit about them, is they could be here in November.
Thank you. Mrs. Parker.
Well, I'll just say generally about FICMAT, we use them for our special education review, and they did a terrific job. But we also, this district used them long before my time on the board, and we have a couple of historical
2000 and 2005, I was on those studies.
We have a couple of historical reports that I've read through that were great. They've always done a really good job. They're a high-quality team, and I think all of our employees would be very grateful to have full confidence in the payroll department, and for us to have new procedures in place as the new payroll team steps into action. So I think this is excellent timing, and I'll certainly support it.
Do I hear a motion?
I will move to approve the FICMAT assistance team. No, that's FICMAT. I'll move to approve FICMAT coming in to perform a management assistance study and evaluation of the district's payroll function.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, 4-0 with one absent. Thank you, Mr. Smith. E3, approval of board action on student discipline cases. E2 was removed, wasn't it?
No, E2 was not.
Oh, I thought it
was.
wasn't. Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay.
It was back on E5, I believe it was.
Okay, no, E2, I thought it was removed.
Well, E2 is pretty well written and explained. We do have Ann Peak here to answer any questions about it. But we were asking that you approve the amended conflict of interest code and appendix.
It's fairly straightforward. Every year, every even-numbered year, the Board of Supervisors contacts us so that we can review our conflict of interest appendix and the code. The FPPC at this point in time has updated the code, and so that is exactly what you have attached here to review.
This is one of those many items that I would choose to put on consent, except they like to see it on action.
I'm going to go ahead and move to approve the amended conflict of interest code and appendix pursuant to Government Code Section 87306 and adopt Resolution 2010/11-21.
Second?
Mrs. Deacon?
Oh, I just had one comment. I noticed, and I think, I'm not sure if this is new or we've always done this, but the Bond Oversight Committee and the Citizens Parcel Tax Committee are also included in this, and I just wanted to thank those members of the public again, because not only do they volunteer and serve on these committees, but they're committed to the paperwork that is affiliated with this. Certainly, we want them to follow the same ethical standards that all of us do, but nevertheless, it's an extra task for them, and so I appreciate their effort to do that.
Okay, anybody else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, 4-0 with one absent. Okay, now, thank you, Mrs. Peak. E3, discipline cases. Who would care to make motions?
In case number 10/11-02, move to approve the one school year expulsion.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, 4-0, one absent. Second
In
case?
Case 10/11-03, move to approve the one school year expulsion.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, 4-0. Give me 1 second to, in both cases, Mrs. Cordero, you moved, and Mrs. Deacon, you second. Okay. Okay, we'll go to the conference agenda. F1, report to the board regarding elementary intervention and summer bridge program. Dr. Sarvis?
Well, we were expecting Shireen Katapush here from Fighting Back tonight to present this. She cannot be here. We had a couple of board members who are on our committee, on our youth gang intervention task force committee, that did hear a report on this. This is also a report that's been heard by the South Coast Gang Intervention Task Force. And let me just briefly report on her behalf that as part of the GRIP grant, a summer bridge program was presented to a number of our 6th grade students who are going on into 7th grade, so it was over the summer. These students were identified by principals as students who were already showing some element of gang affiliation. They were showing various forms of graffiti, gang symbols on their books, things that would show some affiliation with gangs, also in terms of their behavior and actions. Having been identified, they were then referred to the program. A number of students, I believe it was 15 students, do you recall the number?
I think that it was 12 that ended up actually
12
participating.
that ended up, yes. And there were some 80 that were originally identified. So 12 students were met with over the summer. There were a number of interventions in place. The most important, we think, is the #1 gang intervention curriculum, which is the Phoenix gang prevention materials that provide a lot of scenarios where students can examine their thinking on a range of items relating to gang activity, criminal behavior, other delinquency. And we think, and in fact the presenters thought that this is a powerful tool for their cognitive restructuring, but another number of other things were done. There was life skills training. They started with a whole trust building activity. The book that was used over the summer was Francisco Jimenez's The Circuit, which was his childhood. It chronicles his life. There were group and individual counseling sessions. AVID was used during the summer program. Some of our own people presented and participated. John Becchio, principal at Santa Barbara Junior High, for example. Ismael Huerta, who is an outreach worker for the school district. Chief Cam Sanchez presented directly to the students. And all in all, they felt that it was very successful, received student self-reports in terms of surveys and evaluations on the parts of the students. And of course, we will know in the long run as we track their behavior, as we track the things that we think will connect them more with the school, their attendance at school, their grades in school, and of course, as we track any discipline activities. So the Fighting Back group will be running additional trainings for additional groups that are identified. There is a parent component to this as well. In fact, students come and parents come, and we're looking forward to seeing the results of this. We expect it to be successful, but you know, there are a lot of things you expect to be successful, and sometimes just by doing them they are. Sometimes by doing them and really targeting the things that are critical to this process, they are. And you know, sometimes the absence of teen violence doesn't really tell us a lot, except that we don't have it. And I know that the numbers citywide are going down at this point in time. They look pretty good, but we still have incidents on the streets of this town of gang violence. We had one deadly incident just a couple of weeks ago, and that was with adults. Fortunately, it wasn't our students, but we'll keep on this and we'll watch the results.
Mrs. Parker.
I just want to chime in that the site YSS is already following up with these students and keeping a connection with them, and they're reporting. I think one of the most powerful things, and one of the places where I see a hole, unfortunately, in our district, and it's really due to lack of funding, is for these students spending the amount of time that they did over the summer on their new school, at their new school, on the campus of the place that they were going to be attending. It built a connection for them. It really was a bridge. And that was really clear in some of the feedback they had gotten from the students that the YSS was now getting towards the end of September from students about how much more comfortable they felt and how they knew who to go to for support, and the connection that they'd made with each other. So I think it could be really powerful. So I'm hopeful. We just need to keep looking at the data and looking at these students as time progresses.
Mrs. Deacon.
I agree. I really focused on the student feedback piece of this. I don't think we do nearly enough of that. I think it's really valuable when we hear from the students themselves, and I really agree that the part about having them on their high school campus makes a big difference. And I know in a number of areas we're looking at that vertical integration, you know, and this is just another place to do it. I love the fact that they made friends, had those friends when they transitioned into high school, because that's so important. So I'm very appreciative of what they've done. This group works really hard, and they have a great attitude, kind of a can-do attitude, which is really wonderful. I'm a little worried about that Cal Group grant expiring in March.
It will, yes.
Okay. We'll go to F2, preliminary evaluation of secondary district honors coursework plan.
And Robin Swaski, our Associate Superintendent for Education, will present the preliminary update.
Yes, okay. I'm sure you've been waiting for this. And you had a lot of slides to look at, and we're going to have Dr. Davis Hayden in a few minutes walk us through some of those slides and then take your questions. I'm sure you have a lot of them. I know some of you have been interacting with Davis and me and asking questions. As you know, when we approved the honors, when you approved the honors coursework plan last March, it had a goal of increasing the number of underrepresented students in the honors level courses, and it also included maintaining rigor and high expectations in those classes and those highest level classes that we offer. I wanted to report to you, I don't know, I haven't talked to Dr. Sarvis about this, but I've gotten 2 contacts, that's all, this fall from parents and about the implementation of the honors plan, and both of them were exactly the same thing. They were calling actually with a comment not about their own personal students, but a friend of theirs or a peer, a student who was in honors level courses. And I kind of was holding my breath as I was listening to hear. And both comments were that the classes were extremely difficult. And in fact, the student was having some trouble getting help, working with the teacher, in one case working with the counselor, on the, according to the contract as we implemented those, and those were all distributed. So the 2 contacts that I've had personally then are telling me that at least one part of it, that maintaining the rigor in just those 2 isolated cases, but talking about the class in general is definitely in place. So I have the confidence that that's in place. Now, of course, when you're looking at a whole district, one of the goals also was to have some common descriptions of the courses, which the teachers are working on. They have been working on that since last summer when a lot of them participated in professional development together. They've continued working. They just met last week and watched a webinar on rigor and relevance. And they're meeting about those common expectations, those common types of levels of rigor and the depth and complexity in their courses. So I'm fairly confident from looking at the teachers' work, listening to them, and then talking to just these isolated parents, that seems to be in place. And that's going to go on, that will be an ongoing process of this. Excuse me. So we placed, and then in June, we came back with just a brief overview of how Dr. Hayden and I would lead this evaluation with the help of the stakeholders group. We have parents and in the room, the Parents for Excellence in Public Schools, and then also our secondary DAC committee, our GATE committee, that helps us, looking at how we're surveying, how we're evaluating. With any kind of evaluation, I think that once you start and you dip in and you start monitoring, it causes even more questions. And so, we toyed with having this full expansive plan on how we were going to evaluate, and in the end we decided we're going to move forward listening to you, telling you what we would like to look at, getting your approval, going forward, and then taking your direction again. Okay, what more do we need to do? What is this? What kind of question is this now guiding us in what direction? So we placed our students using the criteria. 7th grade was the most difficult, as you can imagine, because we have all the feeder schools coming in. We worked long and hard with you and with the parents and the teachers about what that criteria was going to be. And as you know, I'm sure there are the 4 different criteria that we look at. From 8th grade on, it's a lot simpler. We know those students and all. So 7th grade was a place we really wanted to look, first of all. And at this point, we have our first opportunity to look at those plans and how we implement it. And again, I want to emphasize it's the beginning of an ongoing monitoring and evaluation process. There are a lot of parts of it that we do want to monitor as well. So let's see, where am I? We went through the honors contracts. Those are in place. Teachers are meeting. They're working on that. You saw some sample of the student survey questions, and those also were worked on with the parents, the secondary GATE group. One of the members of that group actually writes survey questions as a career. So we had some real expertise in the room. And then, of course, Sandy Robertson, our coordinator for the GATE program, and Dr. Davis Hayden has lots of experience with survey questions. Those are draft questions, and so we've gotten, at least from one board member, some suggestions on some of the wording. So as you see those, if you'd like to give us suggestions, I think we have just a short amount of time to look through those, and then we go back with the parents again. And the parents were very helpful in this because they have the students at home, so they kind of know what kids are going to understand and how they'll answer it. We just now, in all of our classes, of course, are taking benchmark assessments. It's the first kind of dipstick on how students are doing. That's not to say that teachers in their classes haven't been giving regular assessments, but this is the first district-wide benchmark that we'll get. We'll get that soon, and then, of course, grades will follow. In our monitoring, we planned on like late winter, early spring to come back with another set of data, including the results of that survey, the semester grades, sample questions for the parent and staff survey that would go out toward the end of the school year, and anything else that we come up with or you come up with, or the parents also, the stakeholders group comes up with. So at this point, I'm going to let Dr. Hayden take over with the slides, and then we can have some dialogue and questions on this. Okay, Davis?
Hello. So I have a lot of slides. I'm not going to go through all of them because some of them just repeat different schools. The first slide here, though, is the Latino students that did not get placed in the 7th grade honors English. This is the ELA. It actually takes quite a bit of work to get the data set together for these slides, and I did not have enough time to do the math side, so all of these slides are only looking at the English side. The math side is much more straightforward anyway in terms of qualifications and how well you're doing in the classes. So unfortunately, we're only looking at the English language arts side and the English classes side.
Davis, do you suppose you could get the math and we could put that in a board brief, some of the slides?
Thank you for volunteering. A lot of extra work for me.
I just think that it's critical, at least in the 7th grade, is what I'm thinking.
I will try
to
and
see
get the
that.
math 7th grade to you.
We won't put a deadline on that. We'll just
Okay. We'll look at the math 7th grade and put the data set together for that. It's a completely different data set, so it'll take some time. We found some things out, and we've already gotten student names, actual names, back to the schools to have them look at what happened and so forth. And this first slide shows that this is advanced proficient. These are your best students in the district. And here's proficient. These are students who are proficient but are not at the level 5 or the advanced proficient level. These are Latino students. And we found some, especially at Goleta Valley, that probably should have been placed in the 7th grade honors class. There's reasons for this. We've talked to the principal, and they're making corrections as we speak. So, or actually, I think already have. So this is one of the things that we wanted to do, is to analyze this and find out, tweak it, and find out what where we've gone wrong and what we need to change. This is just the other students. I'm going to go through this. We also looked at district-wide GATE and non-GATE 7th grade placement and English honors classes, and so this is the part here. And as you can see, we have almost equal representation of GATE and non-GATE students in the English honors classes. I have to tell you, though, that this data is very close to accurate, but not completely accurate, and that is because the process of the GATE office for when they enter students into the ARIES student information system is actually only finished Friday. And so I did not actually have time to include every single student. This is probably 95% of the students. So this number may actually be a few students higher. Okay, so these are district-wide GATE placement. This is school by school placement in 7th grade English honors class and GATE versus non-GATE. But the slide I want to get to.
1 second.
Oh, sure.
Is this different than last year, or different than previous years, or?
Yes and no. I mean, to some extent, we made a prediction that it may not change very much at all in terms of number of students in some of these classes, ethnic breakdown, and so forth. Actually, that prediction came fairly close, but you're going to see in a few minutes that a few schools had more Latino representation, a few less, a few more non-GATE, a few. It still came out, as you saw from that last slide, fairly close. So I'm going to use La Colina as the example, and you may ask questions about other schools when I'm finished, but this is La Colina. This is their placement the year before. Gate Latino students and English, these are all English, was about equal to the number of Latino students in their honors classes. Okay, so these are Latinos in English, Gate, and this is Latinos in honors. The combined total is here. This is the new honors class, and you can see they actually increased the number of Latinos that are now in honors class. Gate plus honors the year before, now just honors this year. And we're not necessarily going to be concentrating on the non-honors coursework. If I go to the next slide, by the way, that's 20% of the Gate and honors students were Latino, and same number here for the next year. This is a slide that is quite interesting to me, is that the average CST score, scaled score, was 431 for the Gate, 400 for the honors class the year before. In the combined Gate honors class the year before, it was 420. In the new honors class, it's 419. Now, these are entering CST scores, qualifying a student to get into these courses. It's basically the same, and it's actually closer to the Gate classes than it is to the honors classes. This indicates to me that for La Colina, they have increased the number of students in their, Latino students in their classes while maintaining the same entering CST scores. You can look at the graphs for the other three junior highs. Two of the schools, La Cumbra and La Colina, were like this, and two of the schools were a little bit in the other direction. And so you can ask those questions to either me or Robin Zawoski. So I'm going to just go through those. And there's some charts in here. So this is number of 7th grade students in Gate and honors classes. And this is the year before, and this is this year. And this is the total number, and this is the number of Latinos in both of them. And the overall for the whole district, as you can see, went down slightly. It went from 32.3 to 27.5. Some of that will be corrected by the corrections being made at Goleta Valley and Santa Barbara Junior High. I suspect that when the corrections are made and everything is finalized, by the time they get into the second semester, we may end up with identical percentages or close to it of the previous year, which is sort of where I thought we might be going anyway for this first year of the honors program. This is 8th grade. 8th grade, we also found, when I was doing this analysis, students that were scoring in the advanced proficient that were Latino but were not placed into the honors program. I took a deeper look at these students. I used the number 380 and above, and I looked at their grade point averages, and it turns out that we do have some students getting A's and B pluses that probably should have been placed in an honors 8th grade class. Again, these numbers, these students in some cases have been given right back to the principals, and they are making adjustments in their program. I actually think this is a great idea that I'm doing this in some regards, because they may miss people, and I may find them when I do this type of analysis. Although I think that what's going to happen in the future is they're going to be much more diligent and have a better grasp of how to go about doing this, and I don't think I'll be finding very many more in the future. This is the percentage of Gate, non-Gate, but once again, these numbers are not exactly 100% accurate. The Gate numbers should go up a bit. And Gate, non-Gate placement in 8th grade English honors classes. I put all the percentages on here right off the bat for these charts, because I didn't do them one by one like in the 7th grade. And I think what you'll see is that for instance, Santa Barbara Junior High has 34% Latino students, 26, 28, and 68. These are actually fairly good numbers, and they're a little bit higher, I think, than they were in previous years for 8th grade. So 8th grade seems to be the grade that they actually do more adjustments, and they actually end up with larger percentages of Latinos in their honors program in the 8th grade. Of course, the junior highs now have seen the students for a full year. They have grades on them. They have knowledge on them. They can do a better job of placement, I think, at that point. 9th grade is very problematic in my data because it was in 9th grade that most of the GATE students were not entered into the student information system. And I had less time than I wanted to get deeper into the 9th grade. So I can just show you that we did discover, once again, some students that were advanced proficient on the CSTs that are Latino students who were not put into honors classes. And once again, we're giving feedback to the principals on this so they can try and check to see what's going on and why those students were not placed into the honors program. These are not large number of students, by the way. This number of students over here is 1, 2, 3, and you can see we're not talking about lots of students, 20-some students in the district. And we're non-discriminatory in that regard. These are not Latino students. Same issue here with them. They're students who probably should have been placed in the honors class, and we're not. I have that statistic for, that slide's for the 7th grade too. And that's it for the slides. If you have questions about any one of them or questions about this preliminary data analysis and how we're trying to give feedback to the principals so that we can improve this program.
Mrs. Deacon?
Dr. Hayden knows what I'm going to ask probably because I've already given him a preliminary look at some of my questions and he's answered a number of them already. We did see some variability in and how well the schools did, and it's my understanding that there was not a uniform cutoff score necessarily implemented at the different schools, so that might account, the CST score, that might account for some of the variability.
Yes, and it wasn't just, they actually all were looking at the proficiency level of 5, but some looked more for trends, some didn't, some had more complications in their data. For instance, Goleta Valley has many more GATE students coming into their system than the other two schools because of the GATE students coming in from Goleta Union. So there was all the 4 schools were different in terms of the types of students coming into 7th grade. So they all kind of applied the rule a little differently. And I think that's one of the things that Robin Zawoski is probably going to have a meeting with the 4 principals to try and iron out some of those differences. Is that correct?
Yes, we've talked briefly about it. I mean, very briefly. Because of the 7th grade criteria, the GATE consideration is one thing. However, we're in a standards-based system, and we're in a system that we don't have like a quota or a certain number. I mean, it would be absolutely wonderful if 80% of our classes were at honors level. I mean, that's certainly a goal we have with all students in there. So we're not saying you can only have 4, you can only have half your sections honors. Nothing like that has ever been said. What we want to make sure, again, is maintaining that rigor. So in looking at the advanced level, some of our schools that had large numbers of GATE students and very advanced level students coming in, now that we're questioning this with the data, they used that advanced last year, 400 pretty much for English language arts cutoff. Other schools, you really looked at the 3 years back. You could use up to 3 years of the CST data. So if you have that mean score, you see that in some of the schools, it's a lower number for the honors level. In some cases, the honors level is even higher than it was for the GATE courses the year before. And that's just the kids that were coming in. That large number of GATE kids had really high CST scores, and that's just where it is. I mean, it's not a large number more, but it is. So it's a little bit all over. Our schools are very, very different, and this really points to how different each one of our junior highs is truly in the feeder patterns and who comes to their schools. It's very separated at some schools and a lot more homogeneous in other schools. So definitely we're having this conversation. I love looking at this kind of thing and monitoring and saying, okay, how did we do? Did we meet our goal at all? Are we getting in that direction? How do we need to really talk about it and look at that criteria to either adjust the criteria so that it's more appropriate and maintaining all of the things that we say we will, or you know, is it appropriate? Is it the right way to go? And we're going to get a lot more of that when we see how our students actually perform. So in those courses, now that we know more consistency is happening across the district in each one of the courses, across, you know, every school. If we have more students with lower CSTs in those classes and they are actually performing way up here and being highly competitive with the other students, do we need to maintain that 400? I don't know. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. I mean, that's something we'll just keep asking those questions and keep looking at the data.
When there are students who we missed, like the ones at Goleta Valley, how are they approached? Someone goes to them and says, wouldn't you rather be in an honors class? How does that work?
You know, I don't know exactly what the question is, but I do know that the principals who have those students, they got the names. They were like, whoa, okay. Brian just said to me, you know, we should be able to do a query in Aries and have our counselors immediately find that. So that's going to be a recommendation that goes back so that we don't have to, you know, wait until now. In some cases, that may well have happened already. I don't know that it didn't, but so yes, those questions, either students are moved immediately. You know, when we went around last spring and met with the counseling and administrative teams at every school, we said, make sure there is some kind of flexibility. We know that it's difficult with our increased class size and how packed we are. However, when we find these, if we do, we need to make sure that there's some movement. We can do that. We can move a student in or out, you know, and make way for that. So yes, certainly every student would be asked, individually, even though that's a survey question in the non-honors, we want to know with those kids specifically why they didn't, because they're very high-performing students.
Good. Well, this was really helpful for me, and I really appreciate the fact it's put rigor so much in the spotlight. I have some other concerns, but I'm sure my fellow board members want to talk to, so I'll stop for now.
We have one public comment, I believe.
Did you want to take?
Yes.
We'll take our public comment now. Chris Grant.
Thank you. I'm Chris Grant with Parents for Excellence in Public Schools. I just wanted to say thank you. I wanted to say thank you to Dr. Davis Hayden for putting this data together. This is exactly some of the stuff that we were looking for in trying to evaluate the coursework program. I wanted to thank him for taking time with me last week. He spent an hour with me going over some of the data and really made it part of a collaborative effort where I could look at it and say, hey, did you think about this? And he said, yes, I did, or no, I didn't. That's a good idea. And some of that is what you've seen here tonight. And so I wanted to appreciate him for that. And for you in giving him the time to do that, both for you and for keeping the community involved in it. I was going to bring up 2 points, but I'll just bring up one that I think because there's so many slides in there, one of my concerns was at the Santa Barbara Junior High. I don't know if you saw that or not, but that's where the percentage of Latino students dropped from 34 to 17%. And I want to make sure that we're focusing on that and finding out, did we just create some new barriers there, or what are some of those obstacles for those students? And I wanted to let you know that I am working with Sandy Robertson on doing that follow-up survey. And from what I'm expecting, that was part of what you saw in your packet tonight. They're making a couple of little changes to it. But that's going out to all of the students who did not get into honors but would have otherwise qualified. And we're trying to figure out why, and hopefully we'll have some good data for that. So thank you for letting us to continue to work with you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
That was one of my questions I have circled. Do we have an answer for why it went from 35% to 17%?
Well, I can start and you can chime in, because we've both talked to John Vecchio. And I actually didn't ask him we talked about whether he should come tonight. And I didn't want to single out Santa Barbara Junior High necessarily, because Goleta Valley has a similar situation. What John believes, number one, he stood very clear and strict at 400 as the cutoff and the advanced level. He said when he looked back on his honors courses last year, the mean was somewhere around 370, which was much lower. And if you look at the other schools' data from last year's honors, except with the exception of La Cumbre, they did have higher levels, mean scores in their honors for the most part. And so he's seen his school as he has very extremely high level students, and then he has students, and we're speaking mostly Latino students at this point, that really didn't meet that advanced yet. There are some, obviously, but when he kept that criteria firmly in place, he wasn't able to continue having them in honors. Now, if you look at the 8th grade, which we highlighted, they know those students, they've built in the supports. They felt very comfortable having them in classes, and they didn't have that advanced level criteria they had to meet. So they're reevaluating that, and we're going to have a discussion at our next secondary principals meeting about this data and how, how the students are doing and whether we need to look at that particular criteria as a cutoff. But the school didn't feel comfortable putting students in with, say, a 355, 360 that had been in honors would have been in honors last year in this level, because they wanted to really, they were very, very clear about maintaining the rigor. So that's a piece of the answer, I'm sure, as we dig in more, but that's what John explained to me just as late as this evening.
Mrs. Parker?
Can I just piggyback on that real quick? And that is, that chart was done for 7th grade, but it wasn't done for 8th grade, was it? Or did I miss it? The one where it says, compares 2009 to 2010, and the number of Latino students that are in GATE and honors in 2000. So
No, I did not get to that.
So we might see some pretty different numbers for for the 8th grade.
Well, as you know, the 7th grade was the one I did the most charts on,
Right.
and that was the one that was, most concerned to most people was the 7th grade placement, and so that's why I concentrated on that. The other thing that you can look at is the average CST scores of the 4 different schools, and you can see that the CST scores for Santa Barbara Junior High actually can be lower and still be at a high level for the honors, which means they have some room to bring in more both Latino and non-Latino students who scored maybe not at 400, but maybe at 390 or something like that.
Okay.
One of the things, of course, that we will do is that we will now have an opportunity to look at the entering students who had CSTs of 380, 390, 400, et cetera, all those, the ones that actually made it into the honors program, all the ones that had lower CSTs. We'll be able to see whether they, what their grades were. We'll be able to see, are they doing okay? Are they passing these courses? So that's something we'll be able to see in hopefully in our next report.
Thank you. Well, I also want to take a moment to appreciate you, Dr. Hayden, because I think that you've been about ready to wring all of our necks. As we've been channeling Dr. Noel and asking you a lot of research questions. Yeah. But thank you for the work that you're doing on this. I think it is very, very important. I guess I have a question now. Are you going to present separately these questions, the survey questions, or should I talk about those right now?
Oh, you can talk about those. I wasn't going to do those separately.
All right. Well, then I'm going to chime in with just some concerns I have about the survey questions, and it's something to think about. And that is, I look through it from my 9th grader's perspective, and the ones that were along the lines of, to what extent do your honors classes challenge you? Do your honors classes keep you interested? He would answer so differently depending on the subject area and the teacher.
Oh.
That I feel like this is so broad that it's not going to be helpful. In fact, I think that he would look at it and maybe guess something in the middle, because he has both extremes. And I think that it might be worthwhile to do it by subject area, so that they can, there's the 4 subject areas for honors, and as long as it's something that's amalgamated across the district, you're looking at it district-wide rather than just individual site. I think that that would be more helpful, because then you could see sort of subject area, district-wide, maybe where there's more training that needs to happen, or more concerns, or student placement issues, all those things. But I know that it would make it a little bit longer, but that's where I think it might be more helpful.
I see no problem in expanding that to, maybe we'll just do, we can do English, that would be real easy. For the math, there may be multiple different types of math classes. Maybe we'll just do English and math to start with to get an idea of what's going on here. And I don't know if I want to break it up into different types
But
of math
if you
classes.
even did that, I think
know, that
that
would help.
would really be helpful. So
I agree. We'll do that.
That's a really important point.
Other questions or comments? Mrs. Deegan?
I just have one comment. The Latino students who did not get placed into 8th grade honors English, that still had CST scores of 380 or higher, when we looked at the grade chart, something that jumped out at me, and it is somewhat concerning, is that we obviously had a lot of Latino students with scores of higher than 380 who were getting B pluses or Bs. And so I don't know, I don't want to say that's a matter of teacher perception. I don't know exactly what's going on there, but in some ways I think that's important data for our staff to look at and kind of measure why are these students who are scoring high on these standardized tests not getting the equivalent grades that potentially the non-Latino students are getting. So that is, all this, if you mine this data, you can find all kinds of things like that, and it's really interesting to spend time with and look at, and now I'm looking forward to seeing this put into practice, what we learn.
Well, I just wanted to also thank you for preparing this data. I think some of it bore out things that we've known for a long time, that we do have a lot of Latino students. And granted, the numbers are somewhat small when we think about overall, but we still do have a lot of Latino students who would qualify to be in the GATE and, well, now the honors classes, who are not being placed in those classes. And so I think that was something that we knew, something that we have, had concerns about for a long time, and this is the data that actually shows us that, in fact, those students are getting solid grades, they're getting high scores, and somehow we're missing placing them in the honors courses. So that was, I appreciate having that data. I also had just a quick comment on one of the questions that wasn't covered by what Ms. Parker pointed out. And this is probably a picky little thing, but in the questions to the students who did not sign up for honors classes, the very first question or item under question 5, if you did not sign up for any honors classes, what were the reasons? And it's worded, I was concerned about being able to keep up with other students. And I wonder, because I would imagine that everybody is concerned about that, So I was wondering if, for the reason, if we might change that word to worried, or something that showed a little bit more, that it kept them from doing it.
So I was worried?
I was worried about being able to keep up as more, a little bit more subjective, less of an objective word. And then I also shared Ms. Parker's concern about not differentiating among the classes, but I think if we did English and math to start with, that would be fine.
We'll do that for both the honors and for the college prep.
Great. Thank you.
Mrs. Parker?
And one other thing that I didn't bring up on the survey questions, and that might be, I don't know if any counselors that do enrollment participated in the survey, in preparing the survey questions. Because, for example, one of the questions, I was able to enroll in all of the honors classes which I requested. I've never heard of students requesting honors classes. On the form, you sign up for, your requests are for your electives, and you're placed into honors classes. I mean, it could be that you have an individual case where a parent or a student has gone in, but school-wide, that's not the norm. So that might just be a little clarification question to to have a counselor look at through these in terms of enrollment and see if there's any that need any tweaking.
That came from Sandy Robinson, who should know a lot about what's going on in terms of how they do this. But I tell you what, is that we can definitely take any emails from you in terms of suggestions for any changes if you find more changes on here. But we'll look at that one also in terms of if it makes sense or not.
Thank you very much, Davis. And it'll be interesting to see what happened to those that qualify but didn't get placed. It would be interesting to see if they do actually change.
Yeah.
So, in closing, I just wanted to say that I think having even one student that was qualified not in there is not good enough. Our goal is to have, you know, every single student and to continue increasing the number of underrepresented students that are getting qualified, you know, meeting the criteria because they're having more success in the elementary grades. I mean, we don't want to forget that piece. That's critical. It's not just about, you know, when we get to 7th grade. There's a lot of work being done in that area as well so that we can really increase the numbers and continue to do that. I am pleased, though, that we have actually so few. I really didn't know going into this how it was going to play out because we started, you know, in the spring and we didn't have a lot of time. We rushed. Once this was done at the end of March, we really rushed in getting all the documents completed and the information out to sites, meeting with counselors and administrators, and I'm very pleased with the way the staff has worked with all of us and continue to work with parents. And, you know, overall, I'm pleased with the results. We have a way to go, and we have lots more data to look at. But thank you.
I just want to add one thing is that we gave the names of all the students that were qualified that didn't make it in to the schools. So it wasn't just Latinos, it was anybody.
Anyone. And I love the fact that we actually at this level are talking about individual students. I can't believe we're at this point. This is amazing. It's great.
Thank you very much, Robin. Okay, we'll take a break and we'll come back at 5 minutes after 9.